A lot of people like to avoid clicking on the automation button, but in this video, I'm going to show you how automation and workflows are your new best friend. These are things that do workflows and actions in the background that you can set to really automate certain processes and elements within your business. Things like when it comes to setting up an appointment. Somebody signs up, you schedule an appointment with you. You don't want to be sending them an email to remind them, don't forget about your appointment. Don't forget about your appointment. Your appointment is coming up. You can set an automation workflow for an appointment reminder. That's just one example of automation workflows. Another example I like to use is setting up workflows to create opportunities for your business. When a new lead comes in, where are they coming in from? You can have it all go into one central place so you can easily manage those new leads. You can also easily manage conversations. There are so many things that automations can do for you and your business. Think of it like a puzzle. I love that analogy. You've got a bunch of different pieces inside the software that you can mix and match or try to find the right ones that are going to fit to make the perfect workflow for your business. And it's all based on what we call triggers and actions. So let's go through the automation here so that way you can feel comfortable with automations and workflows and get started playing with it to see how effectively you can use this feature for your business. When you select automations, you're going to land on workflows. These would be a list of all the workflows you created. I recommend creating a folder. When you create a folder, it can organize workflows. For example, you could create a folder for all of your appointment reminders. You could create a folder for all of your forms or a folder for specific campaigns that you're running. Maybe they're seasonal, monthly, things like that. You can organize all of your workflows inside a folder to be able to find them and access them easily. Then you've got the button that says create a workflow, and we're going to be clicking that button here shortly. You can also copy workflow history. You can see your recent workflows. You can view it by a list. You can search a specific workflow, and you can use filters to see what workflows are in draft mode, published, or even paused. This is a great thing to look at because if you notice an automation isn't working, 99% of the time is it's left in draft mode. We'll be showing you some tips on how to make sure that you remember to publish your workflow when it's ready. Let's go ahead and create a workflow. There are already some pre-done workflows for you. You can select one from scratch. You can import from a campaign. You can add recipe bookings for appointments. Here's an auto miss call text back. Here's a birthday recipe, a drip sequence, frequently asked questions, Facebook Messenger. Another one, Fast 5 Lite, Fast 5, Google Business Messaging, list reactivation, long-term nurturing reactivation, sending reviews requests, webinar registrations, the recipe for IVR, and a no-show nurture. That's for people who don't show up for those appointments. But you can easily come in here and select any one of these recipes and work right off of that. Let's select the appointment reminder recipe. This will get us jumped right into the actual workflow itself. You'll see your back button to get back to the workflows. You can select this little dial to see stats when it comes to your workflows. Delivered, open, clicked, replied, bounced. Check this out. So that's how many emails. This could be texting. You can turn that button off if you don't want to see your stats. The builder is where it brings you. You'll see the blue underline right here. Settings is where you set the settings for the entire workflow. I want to go through this real quick because it's very important. Allowing re-entry, or do you want to allow people to come back into the workflow? If you're testing the workflow, you may want to turn this on because if you're using your own email, you want to make sure that if you're saying, I'm not getting things, it's because it's not allowing you to re-enter into the workflow that you're testing. I would have this turned on while you're building your workflow, and then you can turn it off when you're ready if you don't want people to re-enter the same workflow. Stop on response means it ends the workflow if a contact responds to a message. This is good if you don't want them to receive any more messages inside the workflow. I'll show you another quick tip on how to remove people from a workflow as well. Down here is going to be your time zone. So if you want to select the time zone of the workflow, you can select that here. Usually it can be the account time zone, what you set in your business profile, or the actual contact's time zone. I like to do it by the contact's time zone. That way they're getting it at the time zone that's perfect for them. Time window, there's a restriction. If you don't want to be sending certain things, turn on the time window, and this allows you to only send messages during a certain time frame or a time window. An example of this would be if you are closed on Saturday and Sunday, more than likely you're not going to want your automation to run because you may want to be able to respond or reply to somebody during the week. So you don't want an automation to run when you're not actively or someone on your team isn't actively there to be able to reply if somebody messages you. You can also set time windows. You can also check or uncheck all the individual days of the week. Inside the workflow, you can even set your general sending details. If it's a specific person from your team and you want to put the sender's name and their email, this means that all the automations in this workflow will come from the sender. You can always override this information inside your individual actions inside the workflow. And then right down here, this is really important when it comes to conversations. In conversations, all of your new conversations show up in your inbox. If you select Mark as read, they're going to show in the Mark as read inbox. Turning this on allows you to not clog up your inbound conversations with marketing and workflow campaigns that are being sent out. You want to leave your conversations inbox open for the people that reply to your automations, not the ones that you send out. So I would toggle this to mark as read, so that way you're not seeing all the email communications or SMS communications you're sending out, and you can focus on your inbox. Next, we have enrollment history. As soon as we have people enrolled into your workflow, this is where you'll see the contact information, the date enrolled, their current action, where they're at and the status, and when's the next execution. You get a visual version of this when you select your builder. There'll be a little person icon right here to show you how many people are within a certain step. You can also select by certain days, certain events, if it's been executed, failed, finished, process, waiting. You can see all of them. You can also select by specific contact who's in here, and then you can always refresh your enrollment list. Execution logs is the same thing. The only difference is it shows you a history of who's been in and out of your workflow. You can do the same thing by sorting by days, by sorting by actions, status, searching a contact, and refreshing this. These are great to look at first by setting up your builder and your settings, and then second when you want to come and see how workflows are performing and the execution logs it's all going to be right here. To the right, this is where you can set a test to test your workflow. You'll also see this right here, save with the little green. That's allowing you to save the workflow to let you know your workflow has been saved. Remember earlier when I told you that 99% of the problems happen when your automation doesn't work? This is that little publish button I was talking about to make sure you select the dial to publish and save to make sure that your workflow is live and ready to go. Let's start talking about the actual workflow itself so you can feel even more comfortable getting into workflows by creating triggers and actions. Every workflow is going to require a trigger to ignite the workflow. It's like lighting a match and putting it into the fire, and the fire ignites. These are your triggers, and there are a ton of triggers. In our appointment confirmation recipe, we have an appointment trigger. And you'll see right here, anytime you have a trigger, it's going to break it down to detail those triggers. Let's select Add a New Trigger so you can get an idea of what these do. Under the workflow trigger, you'll see triggers based on a specific contact, things like birthday reminders, contacts changed, contact created, a contact that's in D&D, a contact tag, which this will be the most popular one you'll want to use to ignite workflows. I find that tags work flawlessly. Custom date reminders, notes added, notes changed, tasks added, task reminders, and task complete. You also have events as well. You'll see all of these listed here. You'll see right here whenever you see a trigger with a crown, this is a premium workflow trigger. So these work off of your credits. So you want to make sure that if you're using any premium workflow triggers or actions, that you have your credits set up and fully loaded. These are things like instead of using a third-party tool like Zapier, you can actually create events in here. And so there's just a tiny cost associated with premium triggers. Inbound webhooks or things like events, this would be something you might pull from a third-party software to bring into your automation. You'll also see events like calls, email events, customers replied, forms, surveys submitted, trigger links clicked, a Facebook lead ad form, which we talk about this in the Facebook lead ad training, TikTok forms submitted, maybe some video tracking. I'll skip the Twilio because you're either using Twilio or LC LinkedIn lead forms. You'll also see the appointment triggers right here, appointment status and appointment booked. I recommend using appointment status. It's most effective on using that for appointments. You'll also see opportunity triggers. Then we've got affiliates created, any membership triggers, a course started, a category in the course started, completed, lessons, new signups, offer access granted, offer access removed, products, product access removal, a product started, a product completed, and user login. You'll also see payments when it comes to invoicing, payments received, order form submissions, and order submitted. And if you're using Shopify, you'll see these as well. And we also have IVR, which we cover in the phone section. Workflow triggers is what starts the execution. You have to give an automation workflow a trigger. It has to be notified somehow. Most common is tags, but in appointment reminder, in our particular case, it could be appointment booked. You can use the search feature right here to show appointment status. Anytime you select a trigger, you're going to see when it opens up, it's going to tell you choose a workflow trigger. You're going to see the status. You can give it a name. I recommend naming it something. So if somebody else was looking at your automation workflow, we know what this was. It says appointment status. This might be, let's change this and say appointment confirmed. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. You'll see filters to be able to filter the trigger. So when you see filters right here, when it says add filters, this is where we can select appointment status is confirmed. Appointment status is new. Other filters could include has a tag, or maybe they're in a specific calendar. If they booked a specific calendar, a class calendar, then this automation is going to be related to this calendar. And you can continue to add other filters as well. Modified, user is, has tag, appointment status is confirmed. For example, if I wanted to send out an appointment reminder for my class schedule, I would have set it for the calendar and that the appointment status is confirmed. That would make for a great trigger. And all you've got to do is select save, and now your trigger is set. And you can see how we named the trigger. Let's just look at a couple of other common ones. You can have add a tag, which you would again see the choose the workflow trigger. Tag is, let's say appointment, and we can now add a filter that says select tag added or tag removed. We're going to add a tag, and we'll add a tag that says appointment. And if we add the tag that says appointment, now we've given that trigger in adding a tag all the details. Let's go for another one. My favorite is to use the form is, a form submitted. When you create forms under sites and forms, this is a great way to create workflow automations to trigger based on somebody filling out a form. If you have a lead magnet on your website, a contact us page that has a form, maybe you've got a newsletter or a promotion that you're running. They filled out a form and now we can trigger a workflow. And you can do it based on form. Again, you'll see it's common. It's going to open up the trigger. We can say the form submitted is, maybe it's our website, contact us. I'll go ahead and give it a label. And when I select add, guess what I'm going to do? Form is, and what would be the form? Our website contact form. and it will give you a list of all your forms, but this trigger will ignite when somebody fills out this specific form. I'll show you one more here. Let's go into specific communications. Things like customer replied. This is a very good one. If the customer replied from where. So let's come over here. We're going to select reply channel, and the trigger to this would be if they replied to a chat widget, an email, a Facebook Messenger, a Google Business, an Instagram, or a text. So you could create a variety of automations based on your Facebook Messenger, your Google Business. If they send you a message from that channel, then you can set actions to the workflows to guide that customer or guide you and your team through a bunch of variety of actions. So as long as you remember these components and adding a trigger, selecting the perfect trigger that's going to ignite the actual actions that you want to do, that's when the puzzle comes into play. You set up your triggers, and then we set up the actions to work to put in all the pieces to get to the end of the workflow, or we can do things like adding them to a new workflow when they finish the current workflow. So there's a lot of fun things that we can do with actions. So let's talk about actions next. You've got your triggers down now. In order to set up your workflow, now that you've got the trigger, we can set up actions based on the workflow automations that you want to do. A great example, let's go back to the appointment example. And if we were creating an appointment, the first thing we would want to do when they book the appointment, let's say the calendar's on your website or you sent them the calendar link, the first thing we want to do is send them a confirmation email. Sometimes the best way to build out a workflow automation is to just grab a piece of paper and a pen and think about the process of what all you want to do based on that workflow. When it's appointment, what do we need to do? Who do we need to notify? Who's managing that particular appointment or that particular calendar? When it comes to adding a tag or adding any other form, or who's taking care of your leads? Do we need to set an opportunity? Do we need to set a reminder? What emails do we want to send out? What text do we want to send out? Do we want to leave a voicemail drop? You want to think about the workflow process of what it is that you're going to be doing for your trigger. And a great example, and I'm just simplifying this, as a calendar, we first want to send them a confirmation that says, thank you so much, your appointment's confirmed. We also want to send them a reminder. So we want to think about what we want to do for the reminder. We're going to send them a reminder. We want to do it 24 hours, 3 days, whatever it is that you want to do, you want to set that reminder. Then you want to set a reminder for the day of the appointment, 4 hours, 6 hours, an hour before. You want to create that process with your paper and pen, and that way you can come in and create your perfect automation workflow that's going to work for you. Now keep in mind, not everything in the world can be automated. We can't automate you picking up the phone or if a customer called you. So we're going to talk about how to add and remove customers right after this, because there are some manual actions that do need to take place. You can't automate everything. The system doesn't know when your phone rings. The system doesn't know when you've physically spoken with a specific person and you now need to remove them from your promotional workflow. So we've got to understand that you're going to want to be able to add and remove those customers. Once you set up your triggers, you'll see your little plus right here, and then you're going to see all your list of actions. Inside of actions, we can have actions related to contacts. We can have action related to communication, things like sending out an email, sending out a text, making a call, following up to a Facebook or Instagram message, Google message, sending review requests. You'll also see this send data, which again would be related to third-party applications. Let's say you get data that you want to send to maybe a webhook or a Google worksheet. You also have internal tools. These are great because internal tools can do things like if else. If this action happens, then we need to do this. We can also add wait steps, goal steps, update custom values. You can set the go-to, you can set date and time, number formats, math operations, start and event dates, add them to a workflow. So for example, if they're done right here, you can easily add them to another workflow by selecting another workflow on your list. You can remove them from a workflow when they're done. You can remove them from all workflows. You can also set out drip campaigns for sending those emails. So that way, if you have 100 people in an email list or 1,000 people that are all on this, we can set a drip mode out that email before they go to the next step. You'll also see other actions related to premium actions with ChatGPT, other appointment, opportunity, payment actions, marketing actions, more affiliate actions, membership actions, and IVR actions, which we talk about in the phone. And all of these actions can be performed based on what your trigger is. So the puzzle then comes into play once you've got your automation, your trigger, and your automation process worked out, and you've written out your email, your text, and what you want to send or say or do next. That's when you want to come in here and add those automations. What's great about automations is it doesn't necessarily have to be just for your customer. We can send an email to the customer, but we can also send an internal notification to the team. If I add an internal notification to the team right here, you'll see I can notify them via email, the notification on their mobile app, or I can send them a text. I can notify my team member that they have an appointment. I can select the assign all users or the assigned user to the appointment, or I can select specific users. So you can get very detailed within external and internal communications. Another favorite thing that I love doing is adding opportunities. We are all looking at our contacts, our conversations, and our opportunities. So if a form or a tag is performed, you can easily add them to an opportunity. All you got to do is search opportunity, and you'll see create an opportunity. And again, you'll see it opens up the doorway to telling you what the action name is, and then what pipeline. Is it your sales pipeline? What stage is it? Is it the new lead? You can give it a name, contact.name. Where's the source coming from? Select the status. It's open. You can even select people to 1 if they've made a payment. You could have a trigger that somebody made a payment, and then you can move them in the workflow. You can move them in the pipeline to 1. You can have the system do everything you want based on the trigger, both internally with your team, internally with your pipeline, and externally with your customer. Think of automation and workflows as the process, both external and internal, when you're setting up your actions. And that's how you use triggers and actions inside of workflows. Start writing out your workflow and setting it up. Remember, you can always test your workflow. Go to the actual action, test the action, and always test. You always want to test and do that before you enroll anybody in your workflow. Always test your workflow. And don't forget to click the publish and the save to make sure that your workflow is active and live. And when you go back to your workflows, you can easily organize them by folder or search the workflow to see how that workflow is performing, see which ones are published and which ones are still in draft mode. I talked earlier about how workflows are automations, and sometimes we have to be able to manually manage those automations by removing people or putting them into an automation. This allows you to really do a lot when it comes to automation. When you go to contacts on the left side and you're inside of a contact, let's click a contact. We'll select our test contact, and inside of the contact on the left side in the middle bar, you're going to see right here where it says campaigns and workflows. You can see any active campaigns and workflows that they're currently in, and you can see past workflows that they've been in. This is really important when it comes to trying to figure out what happened in the automation, if something went wrong, and how the automation is going. Now you'll see right here on this demo contact, we've got 3 active workflows going on, and we've got 1 test workflow. We can easily come in here and select add, and when you select add, just select the drop down of the workflow that you want to put them in, and you can schedule that date here as well, the date and time, and you can add them to a workflow at a specific date and time. So let's say I had a campaign running. I wanted to set this for a few days later at, we'll say 2 o'clock. We'll go ahead and add it. It's been added right here to the workflow. Now, there's some little bitty icons here that a lot of people overlook. If you're looking at a contact and you see the workflow, check this out. All I gotta do is put my mouse over this little bitty tiny workflow icon. There's two here. There's the workflow icon and the delete. The workflow icon will take me to the workflow that they are currently in. And you'll see right here, it took me to the execution log, showing me where they're in, showing me that they're in a wait step. And let's look at this builder right here. And when you look down here, I told you about little icons where you can see where people are in a wait step. And right here, when I zoom in, you'll see this little person right here, and you would see a 1, a 5, a 20, and how many people are in that step. When you click it, you can see the actual action, the person that's in the step, and the status. So when you're looking at them, you're like, oh, nope, they're supposed to be in here. Then we're good. So when you click Actions, there's a little delete button here, but you need to be careful. If you select Delete right here from the execution log, it's going to remove all the contacts from this step. We don't want to remove all the contacts in this step. We just want to remove one. So right here, you can remove all contacts. You can move all the contacts to another step right here where we can say, are you sure you want to? And right here is where you can force them to the next step. We don't want to do this because let's say we had 10 or 20 people here. What we want to do is just remove the one contact that we have on the list. When you click on this, it's going to take you right here to the contact. You can see where the contact is. It'll show right here that they're in the wait step. You can view the details here. You can also see the execution history and the contacts history. We don't want to remove them from here. You see how it's just giving you the execution logs. What we want to do is enrollment history right here. This is where you can remove the contact from the workflow inside of the workflow. Not execution logs, that does it by bulk and everybody in step, but in the enrollment history. So if we want to remove this contact, all we have to do is click this button and it will remove them from the workflow. So you can do this inside the actual workflow. Just make sure you are under enrollment history and you are selecting the specific person. Now, if you're on the phone, we talked earlier about manual actions. We don't always know exactly what's happening. But if we go back into the contact, on the contacts tab right here, this is where we can select the delete button to remove them from here. A great example. I'm on the phone, they just bought, I don't need them in this campaign anymore. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. It's going to say, are you sure you want to remove them from the workflow? Yes, I'm sure. It now took them out of active and put them into the past workflow. And at any point, you can do the same thing with the past workflow. You can select the little workflow icon, and it's going to take you back into that workflow to show you the execution logs of where that person was, when they entered, what steps they skipped, and when they finished. So you can easily look at your execution logs or manage it right from the contact by adding them or removing them from a campaign. Another great thing to have is a cheat sheet about your process. If a workflow happens and they are done with this workflow, does your member of your team, based on your process, need to add them to another workflow now that they've created this workflow? In which case, we just go back to the add button and we can add them to that second or third or fourth or whatever option workflow you want them to be in after the specific campaign or a workflow. We like to have pipeline workflows for sales, service, and support. Sales being when we make the sale, service means what happens after the sale, and support means ongoing email. Could be a newsletter campaign. It could be another nurturing campaign. Could be an educational campaign about a product or service that they purchased. So if you're on the phone with the person and they purchased a product and that specific product has a campaign, an automation workflow, you can go in and add them to that product automation workflow, allowing you to add them to any campaign and removing them from any campaign manually right from the Contacts tab. Automation workflows are fun. Test it on yourself. Come up with certain scenarios. You're really going to enjoy the triggers, the actions, being able to add and remove people, and easily manage workflows. It's now time for you to create your workflow puzzle with your business and set up workflow automations that work best for you, that are going to save you lots and lots of time. Once you get this all set up, you'll be saving thousands of hours in time management just by adding automations and workflow processes to your automation workflow. I want to show you a few sample common workflows that will hopefully help you get started in creating your own workflows. Let's first start with sales. Would be things like an abandoned cart workflow. Let's click this, and you would see the abandoned cart trigger, waiting for abandoned cart, sending them an email, waiting. That's a very common one if you're selling products. We also have the missed call text back workflow. There's a no response campaign workflow. This is great for those leads that aren't calling you back after a certain amount of time. You might create a no response opportunity workflow to have no responses go through a series of emails until they decide they want to either stop, unsubscribe, or buy or purchase your product or service, or reach out to you for an appointment. No response campaigns are common, and I recommend setting that up. You also have sales nurturing campaigns, things that you might provide informative emails until they decide to purchase. The other one is setting up your website contact us form. Setting up a website contact form would be the trigger of the form, creating an opportunity, sending internal notifications, sending an email, and even adding a note with the details of what they filled out on your form. Another great automation workflow, let's go back, would be for what happens after the sale. Do we have reputation management? Things like account setup, onboarding. What are we doing to help the customer who's just purchased your product or service get through the workflow? It can be things like submitting a form or moving them in an opportunity stage, like an opportunity stage as one. Another great example, if you're offering courses, did they sign up for a specific course? Maybe you have a new sign up. You grant them offers to your course, and you can send emails as well. Another great example of workflows is going to be any monthly promotion. If you're running a monthly promotion, let's say a St. Patrick's Day promotion, you would set your trigger to a tag or a form, and you can run a promotion. This is based on events. Look for event start date, and you can see that the start date is at a certain date and time, and then you can run your promotion throughout that time, and then you set a specific time right here to select the end date of the promotion, and you can continually add other promotions as well. Another great workflow example is the birthday campaign. That's very common as well. If you're offering webinars, you can have a webinar opt-in registration, workflow, follow up after the registration, and you can set workflows there. One of the common ones we have is a 52-week email newsletter. This is something that you may want to look into. It basically puts people into a newsletter where you're sending out specific newsletters for the next 52 weeks. Make these informative, educational, and inspiring to keep people on your email list. Other workflows could be appointment no-show campaigns. If somebody doesn't show up for the appointment, the idea would be to get them to come back and reschedule their appointment. Facebook ad, Messenger ad, Google Business is a great one where you trigger it based on the reply channel. Other workflows could be an unsubscribe list, maybe if they've unsubscribed, or if you've done other website promotions. Advanced workflows, you could do things by specific types of appointments that you have set on specific calendars, and have workflows for a variety of events, upcoming events, follow up. You can also do things like class registration reminders, where you remind people each week to set up for a class. You can add in third-party integrations with Zapier to set up integrations and workflows with third-party applications. You can also add pipeline stages from sales to service and move them through different stages of the pipeline as well. There are other workflows that you can do, like onboarding workflows, specific project workflows. Maybe it's more just in managing the business on what happens on the back end. And the most common is going to be to definitely make sure that you have your forms, your opportunities, and set up those common workflows for appointment reminders, accessing your customer portal, affiliate programs, and so much more. So there's a lot of workflows and automations that you can start right now by doing calendar automation workflows, pipeline automation workflows for your sales process, your service process, what happens after the sale, and your support process to continually stay engaged with 52-week and longer emails, newsletters, and promotional workflows.
Oh,